To sync this podcast to the episode, pause now and hit play right after the previously on. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 3 of Outlander, False Bride, written by Jennifer Yale. I'm Matt Roberts, EP and writer on the show, here with
Tony Graffia, also EP and writer for Outlander. Welcome.
Very excited to be back on the podcast with you after taking a week off. I think who did it? Were you?
Luke, we had Luke with us last week.
Luke was with you last. That must have been fun.
It was fun.
Okay.
It was good. Maybe fun is the wrong word actually, because the episode was not so fun. It was a very serious.
Right.
A very serious episode about Jamie at River Run. Mad Ant Jocasta, and this episode is really the fallout and the aftermath of what happened last week.
Just a little shout out here to the art department. They had this amazing stag built out of wicker and it was pretty amazing too.
That's pretty cool.
And we'll see some of that later too. But some of you might recognize this as the Wakefield house.
Yeah, this is a scene that we thought would be poignant to see Roger back in his childhood home. He has sold it to Fiona, who's now married to Ernie, and I don't know if we meet Ernie in the books. I can't remember, or if he's only just mentioned, but we thought, after seeing her, mooning over Roger last season or the season before, to see her happy now and having found love, that it's very sweet that Roger sold the Wakefield home to her and handing over the keys and sort of closing a chapter on his life here.
Yeah, kind of keeping it in the family. And it's a really good storage unit because he's keeping stuff upstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that Fiona's just swigging that champagne right out of the bottle. She's a classy chick. Love it. And speaking of drinking, we are this week. We thought about having strawberry daiquiris because I think maybe some of you would understand why. But in keeping with our whiskey tradition, we are having Wild Turkey Master's Keep.
Yeah, that felt too tropical. That would have been okay for last season, maybe, in the Caribbean.
Exactly. Yeah. But, there's a little significance to the strawberries. Which
no,
we
there
might
is.
See later.
There is.
No spoilers.
Well, a lot of people have already seen this.
I know. I always forget that people have actually seen this episode.
Yeah, you don't want to watch the first time with us.
No,
that would be horrible.
We're a total distraction.
Yeah. Well, you are. You're distracting me right now.
Well, because I'm drinking faster than you are? I think it's here.
Yeah, this is setting up a little bit of the backstory of Roger and Bree and how much communication they've had over the break. We haven't seen them yet. So.
Right. They've been dating basically for a year or so since Claire left, and I love that Fiona, who really was sort of in love with Roger herself, is able now to be his confidant and someone who is, being supportive and encouraging of his relationship with Bree.
Back to River Run.
I gotta say, this was a challenging scene in the writing, because after what happened at the end of the last episode, it was so horrific and violent. It's like, what do you even say? And ultimately, we just decided, say nothing. Just, basically, we can't stay here, and just go right to, we're leaving. Not gonna be part of this.
And I think there's also, we a lot of people, of course, in the book, it feels slightly different because they spend so much time there in the book. Whereas in the show, we can't spend 3-4 months
Right.
in a place making a decision. You know, we have to move along. We only have a certain amount of episodes. So the decision had to be made much faster. We had to give,
Right.
you know, not that it's an easy decision for Claire. And that was always the problem, is that Claire would come into this
Yeah.
going, no way.
She's just like, we're not owning slaves.
Yep.
We're not going to be part of this. I think it's more complicated for Jamie because he hates disappointing his aunt, but ultimately he's a progressive guy. He feels the same as Claire. You know, they saw slavery, they saw some of it in Jamaica, but here it is, and, you know, he's not going to participate in something that they both feel is very, very wrong.
And Jocasta is just a product of her time. And it's not excusing it. It's
No.
just she doesn't know any different. You know, if you know, you know, you just don't know any different. And
Right.
once again, it's not an excuse for it.
No.
But Jamie and Claire both know different. Claire's, of course, told Jamie, you know, whether it's off camera or on their travels about her time. I've always imagined them in their travels and Jamie saying, you know, tell me about your time. And she does. And there's about cars and planes and things. And I'm sure she's mentioned this is the way the world is in this time. And her friend Joe, and, you know.
Yeah. Here we have she's giving him these silver candlesticks that belong to his mother.
You know what I liked about that moment is that even though Jocasta can't see Jamie, or, you know, and the way Sam played it is that he kept eye contact with her, and it's subtle, but it's really nice. You know, there's a moment.
Yeah.
It's just a nice little beat there, and it's a small thing, but if you're watching it, it means a lot. You know, it's
Right.
that he has enough respect that he still plays it like she can see, and I like that. Ah, John Bell.
Now, in the book, Ian gets a letter from his parents in Scotland, and they basically say, we want you to stay with Jamie, and we've decided, and we give you permission. We changed that up a bit because we felt it was important for Ian's growth and maturity to take a step towards being a man. And the way he convinces Jamie is by taking this responsibility and saying, look at all the stuff I've been through, and I'm like you. You know, I'm built for this kind of life of adventure, and I want to be a man, and I want to write my own letter. I'm going to write my letter to them and let them know this is what I'm doing. And he convinces Jamie, and it's an important step for Ian's arc in this season to have him make this decision.
Yeah. Well, I love the list, too, because when Jamie starts hearing the list, he's like, geez, yeah, God.
Well,
when you put it that way.
Yeah, geez. He's gone through enough.
You know.
He's not a little boy to be summoned home
That's
by
a
mommy
tough
and
week.
daddy.
Maybe you are a man, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it really is.
Now, I love this scene because, of course, Jocasta and Claire have, you know, a lot of sparks and conflict between them. They're on opposite sides of the slavery issue, but the one thing they have in common is that they both love Jamie Fraser very much. And, you know, in some ways, Jocasta, even though she hasn't seen Jamie since he was young, she's family. She knows what's in his background. She knows what he was born for. And she kind of calls Claire out a little bit on, like, look, you know, maybe River Run's not the place for him, but he's made for something. He was born to be a leader and a laird, and, you know, you seem to be holding him back from that. And Claire, it gives her a lot to wrestle with in the rest of the episode. It kind of gets under her skin. So it's an important catalyst for the story to come.
I like that they're both right.
Yeah.
That the scene plays so well, and both actresses have that to stand on, is that, and that's why I think it's such an intense scene, is that Claire's 1,000% right. She doesn't know them together, but Jocasta's 1,000% right. Jamie is a man
Yeah.
amongst men, and he is a leader, and he was
Yeah.
born to be more than just a printer in a shop.
Right.
And I love that about the scene.
Yeah,
and
that-
when you can get
it's a
two
good
characters in a room
Those
and
two
they're both
strong
100% right, it makes the scene so dynamic.
Here's where we meet Clarence the Mule, of course, and we did talk a lot in the beginning of the season about the animals that we wanted to possibly include that we know are some of the fan favorites. And Clarence, we put a little bray in there, a little sound effect, because he is, I believe, in the book known as the loudest mule ever.
Yeah, he's very quiet though. This mule.
Movie magic.
Yeah, I don't know if it's so magical. I gotta say, I love John Bell. Really brings a spirit to this character, Ian, and he's just so watchable, and you know,
Well, he's the most excited, I think, about being in this
Yeah.
new world, and it's just infectious.
you get that through his eyes. Is there's the person
Yeah.
who is excited about every beat, and then you get the other characters that Jamie and Claire, who are a little more
Yeah.
wary about every move that they
Yeah.
make. You know what I mean? So you have a
And-
nice balance between the two.
And Jocasta being heartbroken, just standing on the balcony knowing what she's losing, family, and not understanding why Jamie couldn't get over this.
Well, I think Jocasta's lost a lot of family in her life, and each
Yeah.
time it peels another layer away from
Yeah.
her heart. I like the truth in this is that even though you can write letters and you can do that with long distance call. Remember, this is like the 1970s,
Right.
so a long distance call from
Yeah.
the UK to the United
Oh.
States would cost these
cost a
guys
fortune.
a fortune.
They would not be burning up the phone lines. They do not have Skype. They do
Yeah.
not have, so they've visited a couple times. They've written letters, and they really are still a little bit, strangers to each other. They have that awkwardness at the airport.
Yeah.
But I like that we showed them on this.
And then we give them on the journey.
Yeah.
They actually.
I think
Yeah.
every scene with them has been so angst ridden that it's really nice to see.
That's
them
our
just
car
having
too.
fun.
That's the Outlander. We went out and found this
Blue Mustang, the
Yep,
blue Mustang, because
That's
that's
ours.
what she has in the book. Yeah.
It's at the it's at our
Yeah.
studio. Roger it's Bree's car.
It's Bree's car.
Yeah.
Hey, how come he's driving?
Well, he wanted to. He asked if he can drive. Want to take some turns. There's
yeah.
Grandfather Mountain.
And this is, of course, the minister's cat, which I think the room was a little split on this. Some of us really love Minister's Cat from the book, and some of us were not so keen on including that. It's a little wieldy to put into a scene, but I'm glad we did include it. There's I know there's fans with T-shirts that say Minister's Cat. We thought, we got to give them this. I think it's fun to see.
Well, it also helps that Sophie and Richard, play the hell out of it. So
Yeah,
You
they
know,
did a good job with this.
yeah, that helps.
She just looks so cute and smiley here. I like seeing the lighter side of Brianna. She's usually always so worried about something
There
in the
is-
show, and this is a enjoyable scene.
Yeah.
She just looks adorable, and they're cute together. You really like them as a couple.
Well, I think you have to build that in, especially for people that don't know the characters. You're just watching the television show.
Yeah.
You have to go, why do these two people, why do they, love each other so much? Why do they like each other?
Yeah. To show them having fun.
We did that actual stunt. Richard was not involved, and I know some of
actors
you
were
have heard about Richard's driving. That was not Richard driving. That he's notoriously and one day we'll tell. Actually, we'll probably get Richard and Sophie together with me, and we'll tell you the story of the funny story of him driving the first time.
Ah. Well, what's really cool too about that shot is that we purposely wrote this into the script, the match cut between the road that Bree and Roger are driving on, which is a highway back in the in the 60s or 70s, and then the match cut to that Claire and Jamie are traveling along literally the very same road in the shadow of Grandfather Mountain. And what's cool at this time is Bree doesn't even know that her parents were in North Carolina. She only thinks they lived in Scotland, but the audience will recognize that, wow, the serendipity of them being in the same place 200 years apart. And I think that match cut is just really cool and something that is very Outlander, how we do the magic of
and we won't tell you about all the
time.
magic of how we put that together, but it was a much more complicated than it looked. And I like that. I like when these really complicated, and it takes months and months and months to put together, and they last 3 seconds on the screen. But to me, it that's what takes Outlander to another level. And we're willing to always go to that extra mile. And you can see that John Bell and Dewey, who plays Rollo, have really bonded, and on most of the time, the dog is such a sweet dog that he doesn't growl and bark and do all the things that or fish like Rollo. He doesn't do all those things. So we had to kind of reinvent the character. So
right,
yeah,
right.
And it's just a gorgeous dog, really gorgeous.
Oh, he is.
But loves John Bell
in
too.
Person, yeah. Apparently, Luke was telling me, and Luke was on the set supervising this episode, and said that all of these traveling shots were shot in the same section of woods, essentially, which is a part of Scotland that's maybe the size of maybe a state park. That it was all there
lies,
except for
all lies. That's not true.
There's one shot at the end that's in a different place, but this is, Scotland just is so rich with the landscapes. And Matt, you actually, before this season started, visited North Carolina, drove all around the Blue Ridge Mountains, and what you saw there, you said, "Hey, this kind of looks like Scotland." And
yeah, what ends up happening is when you're the saying, when you're in the trees, it really ends up being a tree is a tree is a tree, and I know that there's, I'm sure, arborists and botanists that are going to want to string me up for that, but visually it kind of looks the same, and that's what we were going for. We pick, what we do is we pick a lot of locations that we can play a scene like this, but then we can have a second unit, running carriages and horses back and forth, so we can create travel. And the thing on our show that's very important is time, and creating an element of moving and going from one place to another. And we've always done it, and it's very important.
Right.
And of course, we like to do it in the most beautiful places. And here's another one where we find them, just really moving along the road, taking it all in.
Yeah, I had to say I was skeptical. I've shot a pilot in, and there's our turkeys.
Wild turkeys.
Gobble, gobble.
Wild turkeys, Tony.
I love them. I did a pilot in the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina myself, in Asheville, and I have to say, it looks very similar to Scotland, and the beauty of the land is really what we were going for here, that as they're traveling, they're just falling in love with the land, whether it's the eagles, the turkeys, the mountains, Jamie is a great lover of nature, and he's being, sort of seduced by the beauty of America. And
well, I think many of the Scots, when they came over, whether it was voluntary or involuntary, because many of them were indentured servants, is that they took up in this area because it was rugged. It was away from, you know, the Blue Ridge and the Piedmont is so far away from the coast that they didn't have that kind of society right next to. So it's like the Highlanders again. You know, Scotland and the Highlanders were so far away from Edinburgh and Glasgow and London, and they made their own rules. And it feels like you can do that out here.
Yeah.
And that's what you know, we kind of try to portray that Jamie was taking this all in.
Yeah. And in the meantime, too, he's asking about Brianna. We always plan this season to have, you know, now that he knows that he has a daughter back in this other time, he's constantly, you know, pumping Claire with questions about what Brianna's like and what the era that she lives in is like and what her life is like.
It's important always that we talked about this much, is that Jamie wants a connection with her.
Yeah.
Even though he knows he's never going to see her.
I think that's part of why he wanted to stay in America, is to
It's a big part.
feel close to her and feel like he's making the country better for her in some way.
Yeah. If he
that
stays and does this thing,
Yeah.
then then America will become America.
Right.
And that's
It's
what.
not even America yet. We keep saying it.
Yeah.
It's America, but we have to always remind ourselves in the writer's room, like, hold on, it's actually not America yet.
This
We're
is-
pre-revolution.
This is Britain.
And it's
It's
British
Great Britain.
territory at the moment.
Yeah.
Now here you can see where Jocasta's words are working on Claire a little, and she, as much as she wanted to get away from River Run, she is thinking, you know, can Jamie be happy being a printer the rest of his life? You know, can he be behind a counter and not be a leader of men or have land and animals and tenants and people to care for? And she's sort of testing the waters a little, and he's like, he doesn't understand because he doesn't know what Jocasta said to her. And he's like, look, you know, that he was an outlaw when she met him and an outlaw even when she returned after 20 years. And if she hadn't come back, maybe he would have kept living that life, you know, printing seditious pamphlets. Even as a printer, he was a rebel. He's not the domestic type, you know, so to speak. And she doesn't want to hold him back or make him be less than what his potential is. He just wants to be with her.
This is that I'm a violent man thing. And I like that the juxtaposition of Jamie is that he is probably the most sensitive man in the world. But also the most, you know, he has this violence that he can turn, and it's always usually in defense of something. He's not a violent man to be violent. He's a violent man to defend his family or his property or his love or whatever. And I like that. A big shout out goes out to the Gary Steele and his entire team for creating what in the middle of Glasgow Park, we created a Highland Games, and we added Grandfather Mountain and the entire costume department, Terry and Nina, who put together these hundreds of people. They went out and bought 70s clothes, American 70s clothes, and just this is what Outlander does so well, I think, is the teamwork.
Look at that! I know it's so authentic looking.
But look, we surrounded this park with American cars. We got 30 or 40 American cars out there, and we pointed them, you know, and it's just so amazing. I love that.
It's great. I mean, I remember the first season of Outlander. One of the first things that some of us did when we started working on the show is when we saw that they had Scottish festivals in L.A. They have one at the Queen Mary and one in Ventura County, and I went to a couple of them just to check it out. It looked exactly like this. When I saw these dailies, I was like, wow, this captures exactly what, like, and what's so cool, I love Ernie's line in the earlier scene. He's like, wait, you're going to you're leaving Scotland to go to a Scottish festival in
Yeah.
America, and this is like the American version of a celebration of Scotland, and it's a little bit, you know, commercial, a little bit cheesy, but that's the charm of it. Is that it's an approximation of Scotland, and it takes the heart of what Scotland is about, and gives you a weekend of this.
But I love that our art department, a lot of the pictures that you see, a lot of those people are from our art department.
Our
And I
crew,
love
yeah.
that. I mean, they drew themselves because you
Yeah.
have to draw somebody. We shot this at different times. We had to wait until the weather got better to shoot all this outside stuff. But the inside stuff was shot at a different time.
Yeah.
And how seamlessly it's put together. I think that's... Richard does bring a great energy to Roger, and you can't help liking him.
He's great, and they're
No
great.
matter how hard you try, you
Yeah.
can't. And I try very hard not to like him.
Well, this is important because they're just bonding and having
Yeah.
such a good time, and that's leading to obviously what's going to happen later is that it's a perfect weekend where everything's going great, and Bree is embracing this and having a good time with him. It's magical. I love the slow motion here.
I like that Bear took the music that was fun, it was festive, and then he slows it down, and
Yeah.
it becomes kind of romantic in a way.
We did this in post, right? We decided to slow it down.
Yeah.
Um,
And the trees swaying, and Jamie's shoeing another,
he's always
he's
working
always
on
working
those
on the
horses.
horses.
He's the horse whisperer. Now here comes Clarence. This is his star turn. Remember this scene a little while ago where he had to run away? Apparently that was one of the hardest things to shoot. They had to do
We had to reshoot it.
many takes. And
We had to reshoot it.
We had to reshoot
take,
it because, mules are known for being stubborn.
Yeah, we were
And,
calling him the Fraser, the Fraser mule because it's very stubborn. And no, we did it. We did it again later.
They tried shooing him away, but he wouldn't run.
Yep.
And he was the most difficult actor on this particular shoot, Clarence.
Well. Obviously, you can see Katrina does a lot of her, well, all of her own writing. To tell you the truth, she and Sam do so much of their own writing. She didn't do this particular moment, but because we wouldn't let her.
Yeah.
But they're very good. Their horsepersonship is very good. They're really good with the horses. Speaking of their own talent, is Richard.
Yeah.
Is plays the guitar and sings, and this is all him.
He was so excited when we told him that he'd be singing and playing because he is an actual musician and knows, and a great singer.
Yeah.
And
I mean, when you say, "Hey, look, I was invited to go to another country to play at a festival," you better be good.
Yeah.
And what was great about it is he was good.
Yeah.
And we put Richard in a room and said basically rehearse, and
Yeah.
he did for days, and he really
nailed
worked
it.
at it. He really worked at it, and I love that about Richard is that he dedicates himself, and
Yeah, and
he practiced
he
so
practiced
so hard.
this song. We toyed with what song should he sing. Should he sing a Donovan song? Should he sing something from the 70s that's American? But we ultimately settled on this song is an old Scottish folk
Yeah, but you're at
song,
a Scottish festival. Doesn't
Yeah.
it make sense?
Yeah, so
I think isn't Donovan Irish?
Is Donovan? Yeah, it sounds Irish to me. But American 60s, certainly folk singers, Bob Dylan, all that was of the era. But we thought there was a kind of a poetry to the title, given what's going to happen with he and Brianna later in the episode. And actually, you liked it so much that you snagged it for the title of the episode.
We did, yes. It's I'm always looking for a good title. Well, the way we do this is Richard actually sang this while we were doing some takes, but then we do playback as well. So he records it and then he sings it live, and it's kind of a combo. But he knocked it out every time, and you can see the young folk falling in love with him right there, whether it be Brianna or the two lasses next to her.
I know this is the kind of scene that in the editing room, even us who have seen it 100 times, you start watching the song and you just totally get caught up in it, and you forget that you're like even supposed to be editing, and the song ends and nobody says anything for a little while, and then we're like, okay, wait, what angles do we want to use in this? Because you weren't even thinking about it because you were so moved by the song and caught up in his performance.
And Ben Bolt, who directed this, did a really nice job in kind of creating that, art house, beatnik world of folk singers. And,
Roger, even though he's, from Scotland, he's in a weird way connecting with his roots too, because I think this is the first time we've seen him in a kilt. And he's a Mackenzie, and it's interesting to have Brianna think like, well, I'm kind of a Fraser, I'm part of the Fraser clan, but she's just thinking about it for the first time. But it's also making her think about her mom, who she misses, because now Claire's been gone now over a year, and she's thinking of her mom in Scotland. It's making her I think it's making her emotions kind of raw and vulnerable. And here, things are heating up between them because this festival's drawing them closer by pulling their Scottishness together.
I think just the whole trip.
Yeah.
You spend 3 days in a car with anybody. You either hate them or you love them.
Yeah.
So, what did Ben Franklin say? After 3 days, both the house guests and fish stink. So 3 days in a car, it's really going to.
Yeah.
And it seems to, they've grown closer and closer.
Now we made this book up.
Yeah, we did.
In fact, I think Danny named it "Home from Home."
Danny, who's
Danielle Barrow, our
assistant who works in Scotland. But we, once again, kudos to location for finding this place in Scotland. We wanted A-frames. We wanted a mountainy looking resort.
It looks like a 1970s roadside,
Yeah.
Oh, and this was fun.
So we found one, so it was great.
Yeah, I think I like Brie in these scenes in this episode more than in, she's just we get to see a different side of her, and she's very funny. I mean, this is the lighter hearted Brie that we see why he's so into her, that she's got a side to her that's adventuresome and passionate, and they're caught up in this perfect weekend they're spending. She's even wearing a tartan there.
Yep. Getting in the spirit.
Yep.
But it wouldn't be Outlander if it didn't get, messed up in some way.
No, and this Scottish Festivals is not in the book. What happens here in the room with Roger's proposal happens when they're visiting each other, I believe at Christmas, and they go to church together. We stole Christmas I stole it for an episode last season, and
You borrowed it.
I borrowed it. Um, and we thought this would be a good place for the proposal, but we did use the bracelet from the book, which he wasn't necessarily planning to propose. It's not like he bought a ring. And actually, I think our research showed that you didn't always get a ring back then in the 70s. It was, you could propose, especially in the UK,
Sure.
with a bracelet, a necklace, but it's got the inscription on it
Yeah.
from the book.
I think that's one of the things, the biggest things that we do in the writer's room is we try to take this massive, usually 1,000-page jigsaw puzzle and use things where people recognize, but we have to tell it in a fashion that fits our format, which is not a book, which is a television show, and we have such limited amount of time. So we have to make all the pieces work and tell a story for people who have never even looked at the book.
Yeah.
So they have to understand it too.
Yeah.
And that's our always, we get asked that. I know Tony and I get asked that. Probably the question we get asked the most is, what's the biggest challenge in ... this season, this episode, this one. And the biggest challenge is always fitting things in. We have so much story.
Yeah.
And to fit it in is so everybody on Twitter and Instagram who asks that question, that's really the answer, is taking all the material we have. The biggest challenge is always fitting it in and moving the pieces around.
It kind of reminds me of those contests where someone gives you a grocery cart and says you get 10 minutes in the store, and whatever you can fit in the cart you can keep. And you literally are speed racing around and trying to grab the ice cream and grab whatever are your favorites and fit it in that time and in that space.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to do. And here, obviously this is one of the high points.
Well, it's a big turn in their relationship, and working out how this happened and how it played, and on the page it's much longer, and actually in the filming it was longer, so we had to cut down some of the stuff, but we left the most important parts are.
Yeah, we had to make sure this scene was very tricky.
Yeah.
That it was balanced, so that we didn't hate him or hate her for this thing where they both love each other, but she wasn't expecting this. We can't make her look like a jerk for turning him down, or him look bad for pushing this on her. But he gets super excited and caught up in the moment and asks her to marry him, and she's like, "Wait a minute, I'm not ready for this." And I think this is very human. I think that miscommunications like this happen between couples.
But the important part of that is that, once again, you have to come out in scenes that you have two people fighting. They have to be right. They both have to be right for you to end up liking both of them. Either one person
and hurting for both of them, going, "Oh,
you have to have empathy for both characters."
Bree, just chill out. He loves you so much. He just, and then telling, feeling for him and going, "Dude, maybe you rush this a little, but she does love you. But just, don't freak out too much. You really feel for both of them because they're just not connecting."
That what helps is the time. Is he's not. This is not the 70s like. Free love. He's a minister's
he's
son.
From Oxford.
He's from
he's
Inverness, Scotland.
He's not a hippie. He's not in Berkeley, San Francisco. He's not like a part of the love generation. He's more of a button-down guy, and she's a little more sheltered too in Boston, being the Harvard professor for a dad. She's not a flower child in LA or something, and so we're being true to their time as well.
But I can see him doing the thing. We don't often use, we have in the past a couple times used rain machines, but in Scotland you tend not to have to do that. There's a rule in the writing room, you don't write weather. It just, whatever happens is the weather that you're going to see. But this particular moment had to be a storm, so we had to enhance what rain, if it did rain on that day. We had to make sure it was really raining. So this is one of those select moments that we would have used a rain machine and the lighting
Yeah.
effects and all that.
And this this little part, which was written to be in a cave, there wasn't really a cave, but they had found this a tree that had fallen over that made like a natural shelter, and so it was set in this fallen over tree.
There are a lot of caves in the book,
Yeah,
and what there aren't are a lot of caves in Scotland.
in Scotland.
So and Gary Steele and David Brown and I will tell you, because we've looked at every one of them. There's just not a lot
Yeah.
of filmable caves in Scotland. So I think we've driven
You've seen
up
every
and down
you've seen
and
every
across
cave
the
in
creek.
Scotland.
And
like
just-
you carved on the wall of the cave. Matt
was here.
Was here.
Yes, because and you go, where are all these caves coming
yeah.
from? So
And
I don't know who that would be.
I wonder, are his initials OT?
Or is that one word? I think it's just O.
It's just O.
Actually, the filming of this was done multiple times. This particular stone at night with the given light, we had to keep filming it to make sure you could see it. The little things that you film it once and you go, oh, well, you can't
Yeah.
really tell what that is. So you have to keep doing it and doing. See how it glows and
Yeah.
and then you bring in costume and say, hey, can you do something to it so we can see it more? And because even though that's technically
Right.
at the moment a prop, it became costume. So what department handles it is
Right.
always a
And this guy too, lots of discussions about how to portray this. He's a ghost? Do we want him to disappear? Do we want him to flicker? Should we see through him? We did a lot of camera testing.
I think
is what my
we
memory
spent
is.
more time on this particular
Oh,
thing
yeah.
than really the discussions of this were, and the filming.
And I believe in the book he's supposed to talk, but he talks without moving his mouth, and Claire hears words, which we couldn't really portray on screen. It would come off. It would be hard to show. So he doesn't really talk or say
Well,
anything.
because we do voiceover,
right.
you would think it was
voiceover,
voiceover,
right.
so that's why we didn't do that.
So she has to just get a sense from looking at him that he's carrying a sadness, that he's not there to hurt her, but that it's a puzzle to her. Who is he? He's obviously connected to the. I believe it was your idea to add the cut to the back of his, that he had been scalped and the blood and the injury.
Because if you didn't,
It wouldn't
you would
be
just think
connected
he was
to the skull.
a guy. Yeah,
Yeah,
he was just a guy.
To let her know that was his skull.
Yeah. Little trivia for anybody. We have every now and then someone will do a cameo in our show. Those of you who are longtime fans will know that Diana did a cameo in season 1. Ron Moore did a cameo in
Yeah.
season 1. One of our longtime producers on the show, our UK producer, David Brown, decided, I asked him, because he was leaving the show after this particular season, to do a cameo in this, and we found a perfect part for him, and you'll hear it in about 2 seconds. So this is still the same location. We filmed this over 2 days in Pollock Park in Glasgow. We did the daytime scenes, and then we filmed the nighttime scenes over 2 nights. And we did it in the middle of the night. So this was probably 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that.
God, yeah.
I still love that they're trying to come together. They both know they want to be together, but sometimes pride gets in the way, especially, as we know, some Scots, not
Yeah.
all Scots, some Scots are very prideful and stubborn, and
Well, we see here why Brianna has some trepidation about marriage, and it's not just that, she's young and in school and, hasn't thought about her future, but part of it is the marriage that she grew up observing with her parents and how
oh, hold on. David Brown.
there's David
He's-
Brown.
David Brown's our UK producer. And we made him the clan caller is what.
He had a good time doing
Yeah,
this.
he had a good time. We had about a couple hundred people out there that day and night, and as it is Scotland,
Yeah.
it was cold, and so. But once again, kudos to the art department,
Yeah.
and the costume department for putting this all together for
It's
us.
a
It
huge
really
undertaking
just
for
it
them,
just
and
really created this
they-
big moment in the episode.
they never disappoint in pulling together costumes at the last minute, even for hundreds of people, and making it look. I remember, part of the edict was don't make them all look perfect. Make it look like a 1970s cobbled together, and it looks very, very authentic. It doesn't look too perfect.
Sam, we found we found some research where the cars would leave their lights on, so we put the cars in the background.
Ah,
the lights
yeah,
are
cool.
on, and excuse me.
Burn the stag!
Which is great. I love when he does it. We made him do that about 10 times. Just we got it. We just
Yeah.
wanted him to
He doesn't
punish
have
him a little
he
bit.
doesn't have a mustache, by the way. That
No,
I think
no.
they put that on him.
So we had two separate stags that night. We had one
That's
we
a
called
real
one
stag.
for
That's not a special effect. We actually burned.
yes.
a
So
real-
we had two. We had this one that we were going to burn, but we wanted to make sure we had another one in case we had
Yeah.
to do repeats. But we didn't. It was so well done
And-
that it burned for about 30 minutes. So it was really great.
Yeah, and I love the metaphor of Roger watching this happen and standing. The stag's burning behind him, and basically it's like it's him. It's the destruction really of his dreams and. Richard Rank is just so good here.
Yeah.
His heartbreak showing on his face, and he's watching the stag fall as he has, crumbled during this, sort of failed attempt at something he thought would be really romantic, and having to realize it didn't pan
And there was
out.
a big debate about whether we watched her walk away because it was played
Yeah.
where we filmed her walking away, and then or whether she was just gone. And I think it plays much better as she was just gone, and
She's just
he
gone,
looks
yeah,
for her,
that's what I like.
and she's not there. And I think his hope against hope is that she would still be there, and even though his words kind of gave her no choice. Believe it or not, creating footprints in mud is a lot more difficult than you would imagine. It's not just
Yeah, I think
stepping in mud and hoping they stay.
no, they from what I understand, they actually cast the
Yep.
footprints in cement and placed them to the camera,
Yep.
so that they could move them and change the direction of travel as needed, or fill them with water, or whatever they needed to do.
That's exactly it, because you can't just hope that you step there and it
No.
stays. And when light changes, and so yeah, we it's the smallest detail. And all this stuff is planned out. What we do is we do prep meetings. We call them page turns, We do that at the beginning of prep, and we do it in the middle of prep, and then we do it at the last day before we start filming. We have a big production meeting, it's called, where everybody discusses these details for the 100th, sometimes 200th time. And you really want to work them out so when on the day you know exactly what's happening. And we do something else for the script, and we do the same thing, and we have script meetings over and over again. And then at the end, on the last day before filming, we have 3 different tone meetings throughout prep too. We have the tone meeting in the beginning, a tone meeting in the middle, and the tone meeting at the end. And the tone is basically, what you want. Say we were talking to the director about, we need this to feel, heartwarming, and then heartbreaking, and then this is what we want it to feel, and so they know how to basically put that onto film, or
we have
digital.
to make sure the director's on the same page with what the writer's intention was, so that there's not, when you're in the middle of filming, you don't have the time to spare to have huge discussions about what something should be. So we make sure all that's planned in advance.
And we do, because we film in blocks, we film 2 episodes at a time. We prep 2 episodes at a time. So it ends up being about a 5 to 6 week prep with, 24 days of filming. And we spend a lot of time prepping these episodes to get, to make sure we know that Claire's hair is going to be wet in this scene, and that Jamie's hair is going to be wet, and should she have her bag on, and should he be wearing, every little detail is discussed. This was a tough one to work out in the writing of this particular scene as well, because you're talking about a ghost.
We're talking about a ghost, yeah.
And I think the one thing that we can always fall back on is that Claire came through time.
Right.
So you have to believe in some sort of magic. You have to.
Yeah, and Jamie...
If you're Jamie or Claire, you have to believe
magic.
in some sort of magic.
I mean, Jamie grew up in a time where they believed that in fairies and changelings and magic, so he kind of doesn't flinch when she says, I think a ghost brought me here, and he's like, a ghost? He's like, a ghost? He's not like, a ghost? What the heck?
No, that's what I mean.
He's like, a
We're
ghost.
talking about toning,
okay,
and that's what you tone, is that that you talk about those things, that they've both come through time. I mean, she's come through time. He sent her through time. There has to be this magic in this world that exists.
And speaking of magic, what she finds here is very revealing when she finds the silver fillings.
Yeah, and speaking of magic, is we filmed this a couple times to bring out the filling, because we just couldn't see it.
I think in the book there's only one silver filling, and we're like, I think we're gonna need more silver fillings, just so they can make sure that
by the way, make them more silver too, because
more silver.
They just looked like dirt the first time we filmed it. Even though to the eye they look super silver, but when you get them on camera, sometimes it doesn't.
It changes, yeah.
So we just have to kind of enhance it sometimes.
And it's super exciting. I remember they did put this in one of the trailers, and I remember Meryl and I talking a lot about, do we want to show the silver fillings and the skull in the trailer? But because it's a little bit of a spoiler, but it's just one of the most intriguing moments to me in the whole season. And we decided, let's go ahead and show it, because it doesn't hurt to get people interested and excited about what's happening this season. So we went ahead and kept it in. And here's our strawberry scene.
It's the middle of winter. That's why strawberries were hard to come by. Once again, art department. Those are not naturally occurring strawberries in this area.
Did they get those from Waitrose?
They
the grocery
may
store?
have. These are all built in. A lot of them, wild strawberries at the time, obviously didn't look like our strawberries that we have in the supermarket. So a lot of those are raspberries, hand placed on fake plants, so they're real raspberries. But
Do they use Scotch tape, or what they use?
no, they didn't use Scotch tape.
Do they glue them to the leaves? They look cool.
This is probably the scene or the view that has been talked about more than any other view in our show. It had to be, epic, and finding it and with the waterfall, and it just had to be majestic.
Yeah, majestic and magical.
And we kept saying majestic, majestic.
Well, here's a big moment of realization where they have to make a decision, where are they meant to live? Where is home? What is Jamie meant to be? He's fallen in love with America. He's fallen in love with this particular piece of land, but he knows that it means making a deal with the devil.
That's what we talk about all season. The question is, what is home? And, for me personally, his home is standing right next to him.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't matter if he's standing there, or if he's in Scotland, or if he's in, Timbuktu. It doesn't matter. Yeah. That's home. And
Claire.
Yeah. And, but he's always wanted to give her things. He wanted to give her four walls. He wants to give her, everything that he can. And that's kind of the story this year is what will you do for that? And when do you recognize what it is?
I also love the music that Bear McCreary did here, and we talked to him about how we needed this to really hit those heartstrings and be, the moment that they realize this is home, and the Fraser's Ridge, what we call the Fraser's Ridge theme, and it's really beautiful.
Thanks, everyone. That's episode 3, The False Bride. Thanks for joining us, Tony.
Yeah,
it was fun. I don't know what we were drinking. Wild turkey, was it?
Wild turkey.
Wild turkey. That was
and
good
we're gonna
too.
I think we'll finish it off.
Yeah.
We'll let these guys go, but we'll stick around a little bit.
Yeah, let's finish the bottle.
Let's finish this bottle.
Cheers, everyone. We'll see you next week. We'll talk to you next week. So,
all right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.